This is Dear Strategy, episode 118. Welcome to another episode of Dear Strategy, where we answer all of your questions about product and business strategy. Real questions from real people in real companies, just like yours. Welcome back, strategy creators, to another episode. This is episode 118, and we're going to talk about a strategy question today. This is a user-submitted question. Before we get to today's question, I wanted to do a quick shout-out for the company that I own and founded, the company that sponsors this show, Strategy Generation Company. Go visit us at strategygeneration.com if you're interested in learning more about some of the tools, some of the training, some of the coaching that we offer. We help companies of all sizes develop plans and strategies for their business. That's what this show is all about. That's what the company's all about. That's what I've dedicated my life to. So I hope you'll go check that out again at strategygeneration.com. So with that said, let's go ahead and get to today's question, which is nice and short and sweet and probably more complex than we'd like it to be. But let's go ahead and see what it is. Dear Strategy, what is the next step once you have a strategy? So it seems pretty straightforward, right? You might be asking, Bob, why did you say it's complex? It doesn't sound complex. The next step, once you have a strategy, is to go execute it, right? And seemingly the answer is yes. And that is my quick answer. If this was a 2-minute show, I would say that is the next step. Go make it happen, right? But there's obviously a lot of layers to it. One of the first layers is the next step once you have a strategy is to get approval for it, right? If you're your own owner or own business or whatever else, then, it might seem obvious, just go make it happen and that's fine. But most people are not in that situation. Most people who are putting together a strategy, they have to get it approved by somebody, whether that's their leadership team, their executives, their investors. Somebody has to approve it. If it's not somebody like that, then at the very least, you're probably executing that strategy with some type of a team, right? Even if you're a partnership, or you maybe have 2 or 3 people in your company. So approval isn't only from a leader or investor. It could also be from the team that's going to help you execute on that strategy. All of those touch points are going to be really important. And approval also doesn't just come in the form of, yes, you may go forth. Approval also comes in the form of helping provide input. Maybe there's something you didn't consider. Maybe there's an angle that you were married to, but that doesn't make your strategy so lucrative. Maybe there's something that you base your strategy on that wasn't completely accurate, and somebody else who has a closer tie to that thing, whatever it is, can give you some insights that you didn't have before. So when I say approval, I should probably say collaboration, or maybe just socializing your strategy, right? Making sure that you're getting feedback, approvals where necessary, before you actually go ahead and put it down as being final. The next thing I would say that you need to consider as far as a next step is making sure that you have all of the money and investment laid out and understood and ready to go before you start executing your strategy. We've talked about this particularly in the last few episodes about making sure that you understand what it's going to cost to execute your strategy, what investments you need to make, what resources you need to have. So obviously that's part of your plan or part of your strategy, but then you have to line those things up. Sometimes you really can't start executing your strategy until you have those resources aligned, until you have that money available. So make sure you know what that is, when the timing that you'll have it will be, and then you can start executing your strategy along that timeline of when you're going to have the investment available. The last thing I'll say on this, as far as execution and implementation, is the question very clearly says, what is the next step once you have a strategy? And I've talked about this before on the show. I think it's really important to talk about again. I encourage you not to think about strategy in such a sequential way. It seems that that's the way you do strategy, right? And the way we teach it is sequential because there's no other way really to teach it, that you have, step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then you're done, right? But in reality, that's not the way it will go. Yes, there are certain boxes you have to check. And so it's easier to talk about those boxes in more of a sequential way. But the reality is the way that information will come in is a bit more random, a bit more scattered, right? Sometimes so let's just take an example. Step 1, get information on your company. Step 2, information on your customers. Step 3, information on your competitors. Those are all boxes that need to be checked. And you can definitely go and do that research in that order. But no sooner do you do that research in that order and get the information, then you're going to learn something about one of those things that comes completely out of order, right? So just when you're getting close to putting your plan together, some new insight on customers are going to come in, or some new insight on your company is going to come in. And that's going to happen when you're way down the road of building your strategy, or even more importantly, when you're executing your strategy. So the point is that this stuff isn't so linear. It's actually quite dynamic. When I put together Strategy Generation Company and I put together the framework for strategy, which frankly is based on a lot of strategic theory that's been out there for a long time. But one of the things that I really wanted to put as a twist on it was making sure that it was drawn in a circular fashion, right? So that you don't think that everything happens in steps. In fact, it happens in a circular way. So I have this analysis ring and I have this planning ring, and it's all centered on the vision, right, that you want to have. And the reason that I draw it this way is because that information is going to come in a circle, in a loop. It's just going to feed one another. And as soon as you put together your plan, then you're going to get more information that's going to feed that plan. And this is a constantly evolving kind of an approach. So that's a really important thing to consider as far as your strategy. So you will put your strategy together. We'll put it together in steps. And then the minute you start executing it, that strategy is going to be challenged, and certain pieces of that strategy is going to be challenged. You have to go back, feed those things back into your loop, and then redo your strategy. And sometimes that changes your strategy completely, right? Sometimes you made an assumption that was absolutely 100% wrong. And that assumption was what you based your strategy on. So now you have to change your strategy. So don't think of it in terms of I have a strategy and now I have to do this, right? Yes, to some extent that will exist, but in fact, a strategy is constantly evolving in the background. And that's what you need to know. Now, if you're a startup business, you're probably more inclined to say, I have a strategy and I'm going to go do something with it. If you're an established business, what I said about this constantly evolving thing is even more exaggerated, because you're doing stuff, right? You're operating as a business. You're actually, selling product and servicing customers and doing things. So you're not going to stop that and then put a strategy together and restart it, right? You're going to continue doing that, put a strategy together based on what you're doing, and then start executing it in a dynamic way. All of the time, this is all happening at once, right? So I know that may be a little hard to visualize, a little bit hard to explain, but I think you get the point. Just don't think about it as step 1, step 2, step 3. That might be a good way to build something, but it's not a good way in reality to implement it. And the one last thing I'll say as to why that is because you don't want to be married to any one of these steps. If I put together a strategy in step 1, step 2, step 3, and then I execute, and I don't think I can go back and revisit any of those things, inevitably, I'm going to be putting the wrong strategy in place, because strategy is going to change. Your assumptions are not all going to be right. If you don't allow yourself the ability to go back and change some of those steps and modify some of those things, then your strategy is almost definitely going to fall flat. So I don't know if I took a breath through that entire thing. I guess that must have been on my mind, but I hope you get the point. I hope it's not too much to absorb, but if it is, go out to dearstrategy.net and you will find our blog. And on the blog, I do a write-up or a blog post on every one of these episodes. So I'll do it for this one as well. So make sure you go check that out, and all of these random thoughts will be put into some fashion that you could understand, some sequential fashion, as it turns out, which is contrary to every single thing that I just talked about. So there you go. Obviously just kidding, but yeah, go check that out if you get a chance. Dearstrategy.net, click on the blog and you'll see the blog post for all the episodes we do. And that'll help you to have a constant resource that you can go back to anytime you have this type of a question. While you're doing that, don't forget to make time for the plan, and we'll see you back here on another episode of Dear Strategy. Thanks for joining.
Thank you for listening to Dear Strategy with Bob Caparelli. To learn more or to submit a question to be featured on our show, please visit us at dearstrategy.net.